One thing we all love is good food, and without accurate information on how to take care of ourselves, we're lost. Let's start with some facts. If you look at the Amish living in Pennsylvania, you see people who live like the locals lived 100 years ago. They're walking 17,000 steps a day or more, working hard physically most days, and eating a simpler diet. They're not occupying themselves with electronics, and they're leaner than the average American. They eat less at meals and generally aren't snacking all day long. Less than 3% of Americans were obese in the 1850s, and almost half are today. I'd like to introduce you to someone special. His name is Calley Means. He has a really unique perspective because he personally started his career at the White House, was a consultant for a major government contractor, and then was a lobbyist representing companies like Coke to pressure lawmakers. Let's hear his opinion.
We have seen teenagers 45% obese or overweight. It's obviously because of a rigged food system. What's so dangerous about this is that obesity isn't the problem. The problem is that children systematically, through a rigged system, are putting, poisonous, processed food into their system. All the elite med schools in the United States, 80% in total, do not teach one nutrition class to doctors. Doctors spend almost every moment in medical school learning pharmacology. Our medical system is incentivized to stand and wait for people to get sick. Cancers, dementia, kidney disease, COVID deaths, all these things, when you trace it, are actually tied to food.
This is crazy. Through lobbying and through questionable academic studies, an industry controls the narratives around food and nutrition, and it looks devoted to creating new clients, to hook them, and to keep them coming back for more. Imagine if overnight processed foods were banned, annihilated, and people just ate healthy. What would the difference be to diseases like heart disease, diabetes, cancer?
The American Academy of Pediatrics, which sets the guidelines for pediatrics in this country, the majority of their funding comes from pharma, but they set the agenda. And just last week, they recommended that every obese and overweight person in this country over 12 gets an obesity drug. And this is a lifetime injection, making them lifetime patients.
Even though we just ended a crisis where there's been controversy around injecting children and adults, perhaps needlessly, let's be sure we get the full picture so that we don't jump to any conclusions and pull out the pitchforks before they're really necessary. What is this new obesity drug? What's the story behind it? And why is it so dangerous?
It says on the label for this drug that there are serious and unknown metabolic effects if you go off this drug. But now that 45% of children are overweight or obese, we are getting a full court press to have this obesity drug injected into a large percentage of American teens, making them lifetime patients. So once again, it's a distraction, making lifetime patients. And I think the most important thing here is that this is projected to be the most expensive drug in American history. We're on track to spend trillions on this drug. It would be much cheaper to just have healthy food for kids.
So, through controlling the narrative around medicine, as well as controlling the narrative around food, it's hard to argue this industry isn't devoted to creating new clients, new patients, new customers for their products. But who are they? Ozempic is manufactured by Novo Nordisk, but we have to look deeper. We can see Jim Simons and BlackRock are major shareholders, but the interesting part is that 45% of the voting shares of Novo Nordisk are owned by Novo Holdings. We can't see the owners of Novo Holdings, but they are the largest charitable foundation in the world and own 150 smaller companies through investment. What does Harvard have to say about the debate?
I was actually debating a leading Harvard doctor this week who is a big proponent for Ozempic. He's saying that obesity is actually a genetic disease, not tied to food or lifestyle. And she said she does not know why there's a crisis of childhood obesity, and it's, quote, complicated. This is not complicated. We are being poisoned from a rigged food system, and the medical system is profiting.
So, our finest educational and academic institutions have been co-opted. For a top Harvard professional to be so apparently puzzled to not even recognize how childhood obesity could be increasing with sugar increasing in diets. If you came down as an alien to Earth and saw what was going on, 80% of adults obese or overweight, metabolic dysfunction, 8 of the top 10 killers are tied to food, you'd have a clear policy recommendation. Let's really focus on food. Let's focus on teaching kids how to exercise, how to meditate, how to get control over their mind, and how to eat healthy. But that's not what we do. We wait for everyone to get sick and then drug them. And it's much more profitable for big food and big pharma to do business this way. So how does that process of corruption actually work?
Early in my career, I actually helped co-create this system. They pay the American Diabetes Association. Those associations, the medical establishment, has been silent that the fact that the cells and the metabolism of our children has been decimated by food companies. Working for Coke, we had a strategy. Now, processed food companies contribute 11 times more money to nutritional research in the United States than the NIH. Basically, processed food companies are funding research, and the direct strategy was to fund thousands and thousands of studies to complicate the issue. Still, to this day, elite research institutions are putting out studies questioning whether sugar causes obesity. So it's mass confusion. And then the medical system is totally silent on that. The medical system is not ringing an alarm bell about childhood diabetes, obesity. They're profiting from it.
So we just got a glimpse into the inner workings of the food industry and how it uses its considerable power and resources to manipulate the public and corrupt the system. By funding nutritional research and studies, the industry creates confusion and doubt, thereby obscuring the truth about the harmful effects of processed foods such as sugar. He admits to being complicit in this scheme, which is alarming and raises questions about the ethical standards of the food industry and those who represent it. The fact that the medical establishment is complicit in this corruption is equally disturbing. Rather than speaking out about the devastating effects of sugar and processed foods on our children's health, medical professionals are profiting from it. This underscores the need for greater transparency and accountability in the food industry and for the medical establishment to prioritize the health and well-being of the public over their own financial interests. It also serves as a reminder to all of us to be critical consumers and to seek out information that is not tainted by industry bias. This is a wake-up call for all of us to pay closer attention to what we eat, to demand transparency from the food industry, and to hold our medical establishment accountable for the role they play in perpetuating this corrupt system. The health of our children and future generations depends on it. It's fair to say that big food is able to exert considerable pressure on research organizations around diseases like diabetes, heart conditions, and heart disease, oncology, and even cancer. So how much are we paying for all these diseases, and what are we receiving for all that money we're spending?
The key thing to understand is that in every institution, from pharma to med schools to your hospital, they make money on interventions of people that are sick. And we spend $250 billion on cancer. We spend over $1 trillion on diabetes care. 25% of the United States is on a mental health medication. We have 40% of men over 40 in the US are on a statin to prevent heart disease. The problem is all of the conditions I just mentioned are going up. As we're spending trillions of dollars to treat these conditions, they're all getting worse. Rates of everything is going up. It's because the foundational reason for all of the diseases, it's very simple, and we're being gaslighted. It's because of food. If you are metabolically healthy, if you're eating healthy food, if you're at a normal weight, you're very unlikely to die from COVID. You have an almost 0% chance of getting diabetes, heart disease, even Alzheimer's, which is now called type 3 diabetes and is highly tied to metabolism. So we are ignoring the actually simple root cause, and this is by design. People getting sicker and sicker, and us kind of confused about why that is, helps the medical industry profit. And then when you trace the money, more than 50% of medical school funding touches pharma.
It's simply corrupt that the Food and Drug Administration regulates both big pharma and big food. This really illustrates how a process of delicious poisoning through sugary, fatty, salty, processed foods is a win-win for them. It's a win for big food to get you hooked and addicted to these toxic nutrients, and it's a win for big pharma to have so many sick people to treat with their injections.
Like, we are decimating our human capital when 25% of kids now have prediabetes. Diabetes is cellular dysregulation in their brains throughout their precious bodies. And I think we're really being just distracted from it. I think it's the most important issue we face in the world.
This was bad enough when it was, peasants who had to eat potatoes or pasta or rice or whatever carbohydrate-based food is appropriate for peasants in that time. But now the appropriate food is processed poison. It's also a problem of inequality, of course, isn't it? Because now people that are affluent replicate the kind of diet you would have if you were living naturally. Like, I recognize that I should be eating organic food. I should probably eat food that's available in the place that I live, in the season that I'm in. The ordinary conditions of our evolution are now a privilege because we're tied to economic systems and institutions of profit that will not support our access to nature, even when it comes to sustenance, let alone nutrition. This next part will blow your mind. He literally admits to pumping children full of coke.
So working for Coke, one of the first things we did is pay the NAACP and other civil rights groups. And I think that's part of the playbook. It's to racialize and make the debate a class issue. Of course, it was total gaslighting because what was at stake here is that Coke wanted more funding to keep lower income children on Coke, which is giving them diabetes.
What we require are systems that respect our human nature and support our nature rather than enhance the evident corruption and mapped on systems that are built for profit. Of course, it seems that when you have a poisoned, bewildered, distracted population, you can profit from their illness. You can profit from every aspect of their life. You can profit from fattening them up, and you can profit from healing them.
In the United States, because pharma spends 3 times more than any other industry on lobbying, the United States is not even able to negotiate the drug price. So Ozempic prices don't go down when volume goes up. Prices are going up in healthcare and quality is getting worse. So Ozempic is $2,500 a year. It's not going down. There's a full court press for government subsidization, taxpayer funding. It literally, if that is prescribed how it's projected, that will be trillions of dollars over the next 10 years. So again, when we talk about these classes, we talk about poor folks not being able to afford the food. Again, you take 1/5 of the amount we're planning to spend on Ozempic, you could buy organic, pure, whole food for every obese child in this country. So I think that economic debate we really need to understand. We have a public policy that waits for people to get sick, which I think is evil.